What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Gin College Podcast. I'm your host, John J. II, alongside my partner in crime, sports expert and enthusiast across the board, Tony Minarik. Tony, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good.
Whew, I was trying to get that all out in one breath, but I got to work on my lung capacity. I guess I got to, you know what I mean? So we'll leave it at that. But how you doing? How's everything going? Obviously, a tough loss for our Spartans the other day. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. But how have you been enjoying the college basketball season so far?
Pretty good. Definitely something to kind of get used to is the SEC and Big Ten being so big, and especially SEC I don't want to say coming out of nowhere, but all of a sudden being basically 16 teams deep. I don't think everybody saw that coming. Pretty much any team could make the tournament out of the entire conference. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, well, you talk about the realignment. We're going to talk about that primarily with the Big Ten, but how it's also affected the SEC. Or did they realign, or did they
Oh
say
yeah,
this?
they added Oklahoma and Texas,
That's right. So they added some
and
teams,
I think they had another team too.
but did they have regions? Did they have regions before this year?
Beforehand, well, in basketball they never had regions. Big
Okay.
Ten regions either, but football, I don't. Football did have regions.
Okay.
I
Right.
think. Pretty sure they did. I know
Yeah,
they
I
used
know
to.
football did. I know football did for the SEC.
Basketball, I don't. There is no regions, and I don't think any conference in basketball. It's just best record, top team.
Right, and that makes
Yeah.
sense to kind of do that more for football than basketball, just because of the amount of games that you're allowed. Really, it does allow for more conference games, especially if you add teams to the conference, which both the SEC and the Big Ten did. So we saw a lot of changes basically between both
Well,
conferences.
you can also share a conference championship. You can't do that in football.
That's true. That's true. So we'll get into all that. And basically, when we talk about the realignment, we'll use that term quite often tonight. It's basically the adding of teams and the creation of a super conference, which has happened both in the SEC and the Big Ten. But as Michigan State fans, as Izzone fans, fans of the Spartans, this affects the Big Ten mostly, and it affects everybody in the Big Ten. But it affects us the most because we follow the Big Ten, follow the Spartans, obviously. So we'll talk about that a little bit. First off, though, I want to talk about the AP polls. What are the teams that look good? What teams are hot? What teams are not, but still in the AP polls? And I want to bring up a very important aspect to the AP polls. This is the case for football and for basketball, but it talks about you call this, it's just like the strength of status for certain teams. Like could have a team, like I'm looking at it right now, Arizona. Okay, I'm looking at Arizona 17-6. They're sitting at 13th. They're in the Big 12. All right, and then you got Creighton is 18-6. They're down there at 24. Even Maryland at 18-6 in the Big 10, and they're 25. So I guess what do we figure that is? The reason why that is. I guess just looking at it at face value, why can certain teams have a worse or mediocre record as mediocre and fall at a certain place in the pack when it comes to the AP polls? What's the reason for that?
Well, I think it's definitely the conference you play in because I know the conference you play in helps, especially like Maryland, but the problem is having a tough conference where you beat on each other. So you might pick up a couple more losses than you normally would being in a tough conference. I test looking at a record, you go, oh well, they've got three more losses than Creighton or St. John's type situation. You go, well, obviously they're better, but you kind of look at it and go, well, they get beaten up a little more. So you got to take that kind of in consideration. And on top of it, I think like Arizona, their big wins, they've had some bad losses, but their bad losses I feel like have been in, being out in the West, have been especially for us being Eastern time zone, is their loss have been at midnight, 1 a.m. I don't think a lot of eyes are on top of it as much as someone that's playing at 7 o'clock Eastern time that's finishing at 9. And then their big wins have been, the game. ESPN putting it as like their college game day game, like their last win. I can't think of what the team was, but they just had that big win that went into overtime. They got the half quarter or over half court shot to tie it, then went overtime. Like that had everybody's eyes glued to the screen. And I think they get a little bit of the eye test that boosts them up a little bit because you would look at and go, oh, Arizona's the dangerous team after that great win. But then you look at and go, well, I think Maryland's a better team than Arizona is, but it's like they're getting beat up playing, Big Ten basketball in a tough conference that is anybody could win from bottom to top any day of the week.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Any team can win any day of the week. That's the case with the AP, which I think is surprising in and of itself, but it's also the case in the Big Ten. And we'll talk about that here shortly. But yeah, you mentioned the Caleb Love 3/4 shot to win. I believe that was Iowa State, the Cyclones.
And they're in a spiral like State is too.
Yeah, so we've seen that happen to a couple teams. We've seen that happen to Kansas. It's happened a little bit to Wisconsin. Now Purdue is on the brink of going out of the top 10 with a big loss to Michigan. So this can happen to teams, but teams can get hot at any point too. I think, and we've said this too. I think at least I've said it to myself going into the tournament. You've seen past Michigan State teams go in as a 1 seed, and you look at them like, okay, we feel good about the 1 seed, but at the same time, we kind of wish we were more in the middle of the pack because if you're number 1 in the nation, every team that's below you has your number. So they're going to want to take you down, and they're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And I think it's just the added pressure that especially Michigan State does not respond well to when they have that kind of pressure on their backs to go out and play the game of basketball. They have enough pressure as it is, just sitting atop the Big Ten for as long as they did. Winning against some really good teams and playing really strong-headed, strong-minded basketball. So I don't want to dive too deep into them right now. But just looking at the AP polls as they stand, number 1, Auburn, 2, Alabama, both in the SEC. Also, Florida at number 3
They're
in
playing
the
each other
SEC.
this week too.
Yeah, and these are subject to change. I think there's still some, we got to wait till next week because obviously Michigan
Monday.
State sitting at 11, they're gonna drop, I think, even more. They were lucky to drop the amount of spots they did after losing to UCLA. But then going down to 5, Tennessee, 6, Houston, 7, Purdue. They're going to drop Texas A&M at 8, St. John's at 9. That's pretty impressive. And Iowa State at 10 as it stands. Michigan State 11, Texas Tech 12. Can you speak to Rick Pitino a little bit? I almost said Paterno. Rick Pitino. Speak on Rick Pitino and what he's been able to do at St. John's. We talked about his tenure at other teams and how basically he's able to come into a team and he's able to transform that team. Not the first year. You can't really expect much to happen the first year at any university. But coming back the second year, how much of a splash he's made at a lot of the teams that he's been at, but specifically St. John's. What has he been able to do with this team and in the past to do that?
Well, I mean, I don't think anybody had any regards, like hatred on his coaching. I mean, everywhere he went was successful. So he was obviously a good coach. It was kind of the off the court issues that he was having, the boosters and stuff like that, and paying players, and then hiring prostitutes for guys and stuff like that. That was what kind of was getting him the bad image. I mean, he was still a good coach. So if you just as soon as he leaves the gym, if you cut all that out, just do his work that he's doing on the court, he's a good coach. And I think he's shown that this year. I mean, he's still kind of can rub you the wrong way because his team is also the one that doesn't do the handshake line anymore because they had an issue once. So now they don't shake hands when the court game's over. They walk off, which it's personal opinion. And it's kind of what do you think of it? Like person to person. I'm not a fan of it. I think you got to be a good winner and a good loser, even no matter how much they pissed you off. I mean, you don't have to go all Juwan Howard and start swinging in the handshake line, but also, be respectable about it. You shake hands, and as soon as you leave the handshake line, you can go in the locker room and go, I fucking hate that team, and I hate that coach, and I hate every player on there. That's fine. But just go through the actions. Like I said, you don't have to be their best friend. But coaching-wise, he's got his players playing the game of basketball that you should. They're rebounding. They're shooting well. I mean, they're not the greatest three-point shooting team, but still kind of like Michigan State, they make them kind of when they need to. But if they're relying on it and you need 5, 6, 7 threes in a second half, you're not necessarily going to get it. They're not a great shooting team, but they rebound well, they defend well, and they can score in the paint, which is this NBA, they don't really do that anymore, but college basketball, even that's kind of turning more into like Alabama, which is run and gun. So being able to score in the paint and rebound is kind of a lost art. He's kind of playing that old school basketball, and it's winning them games.
Yeah, he's been able to do that. And I think most people remember him as the Louisville coach for X amount of years he was there. But just seeing a Big East team, especially St. John's, I guess it's not that surprising, but to see them in the within the big or the top 10 in the AP is kind of impressive. Impressive. They're down there with Creighton and Marquette, which have both proven to be strong teams. And the Big East has really always produced solid basketball teams. So that has to be recognized. But just looking at St. John's in the top 10 in the AP is kind of impressive. I am impressed to see that. So we'll see what they do. They got a big one against Creighton coming up here in a couple days. So that's going to kind of be it's going to be a big game, have implications not only in the AP but also in the Big East. So got a lot of big games coming up. We got a good stretch of games that are down the line, both for Michigan State and a lot of Big Ten competitions. But across the board, you got a lot of really good in-conference games leading into the conference tournaments. So I'm excited for it. We couldn't be doing this show at a better time because it's kind of a lull period right now. There's not a lot of stuff on TV. There's not a lot of stuff going on sports wise. Still got games here and there, but for the most part, it's really kind of slow right now. So it's a good time to do what we're doing. So let's just talk about the Big Ten standings as they stand right now. So Michigan, with their win against Purdue, sits at the number 1 spot. Purdue behind them. Michigan State behind them at number 3. They were at number 1 for the longest time. Took a couple bad losses in conference. Then you got Wisconsin, UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Ohio State, Nebraska, USC, Oregon, Indiana, Iowa, Rutgers, Minnesota, Northwestern, Washington, Penn State. So I guess just looking at the top 5, looking at the teams, obviously Michigan is 11-2, Purdue 11-3. I mean, that's a good mark to hit if you're Dusty May over there in Ann Arbor, getting 11 wins under your belt in mid-February. That's got to feel good as his first year there. I guess what has he been able to do to this Michigan team to really revive them and kind of get them out of the Juwan Howard era, which I think was very cancerous, I think, for the Michigan players and the team, the program, everything. What has he been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got them to obviously play together because I think they played with John Howard was a lot of hero ball. Like, everybody get out of my way. I'm going to shoot it 25 times, and if I make one of them, that's what I do. Like, doesn't matter. Get off my ass, basically. I'm the guy. You're just all my little just helpers. And he's gotten away from that because obviously you can score from many different positions and many different players are providing and helping out the team. Mainly, I'm not. It's not luck, but a lot of his last 7 games have been decided by 5 or less points, and he's lucked out. I think he's won like 6 of the 7 or something like that. Like, he's been very fortunate that them close games he's winning. I mean, obviously there's no such thing as complete luck, so obviously he's doing the right thing, but the ball is falling his way, which is helping a lot. So he's doing the right things to win them games and put his team in position to win them close games. And I mean, if you're winning close games, a win's a win, no matter if you win by 150 or you win by 1. So a win's a win, and they're winning games and they're playing well. The only thing that scares me about the team is you don't know who you're going to get. They've looked really well for most of the year, but then some of their losses, you're like, they look completely unhinged and kind of lost. So if they play well and rebound and, kind of keep doing what they're doing, or run and gun, because they got Wolf, who's kind of playing a good 1-2 matchup with Vlad Golden, both being over 7 foot, kind of helps. You can see over the defenders. So that's giving them opportunities to score. And if they can keep clicking 1-2, they're going to be hard to beat. But I think you definitely got to shut down one of the 2 guys if you're going to, obviously, preferably if you're a defending team, you want to shut down both, but you got to shut down at least one of the 2 if you have any shot of beating them.
Yeah, Vlad Golden, you mentioned, he is a true center. Playing 28 minutes. You got Danny Wolf, which is a glorified center, realistic forward. As we've seen, it kind of become the norm in college basketball specifically. Kind of you got these big guys that can shoot from outside the perimeter, and they can drive to the basket. They can shoot mid-range jumpers. They can do it all. somewhat. He's a multi-tool. Danny Wolf playing 37 minutes in that one against Purdue. So, yeah, you got a nice dynamic duo there. Then you got Trey Donaldson and Roddy Gale Jr. coming off the bench, doing some great things for Michigan's team, and they're doing a great job. Dusty May's doing a hell of a job. Got to give him all the credit in the world. Obviously, Michigan is the enemy that cannot be forgotten, and we'll keep that in mind. Comment from Mama Bink: It's Big Toe. I only watch college basketball in March. I'm a fair weather fan. Mama Bink, you got to watch the Spartans. You got to be a diehard fan. That's the only way to go. And Tony knows what I'm talking about. Paulie knows what I'm talking about. So it's really fun. It's really fun to watch. It's a great pastime to follow college basketball. I don't know. I like it. I guess take us back to your roots a little bit, T. Just give me a quick snapshot into your past. What was your first drawing factor to the Michigan State Spartans basketball program? Because I'm looking back, and we talked about this before. It can be any number of teams, but what was the team that you remember? Who was a player that you latched onto early on?
Well, early on, I mean, probably the first basketball games I was watching, obviously, I was young, was probably Drew Neitzel, probably point guard. But the first player that was like, I'm still a huge fan of, and I think he was one of the greatest point guards at Michigan State, and I think he kind of gets undervalued, was Kalen Lucas. He was my guy. I loved him. Number one, he always had them deep runs in March, and I think it was 2009 or 2010, I'm not sure. I would have won the championship if he didn't tore his Achilles in the second round or first round or something. I think if he's healthy, I think they win the championship that year. But I love Kalen Lucas. I thought he did everything he could pass, but then he was reminds me of like a better scorer, but worse passer than like Cassius Winston. You need a bucket. He gave you a bucket and was, the guy. He could shoot from anywhere, but he could pass, but he was definitely more of a scorer than passer. Where I feel like Cassius was the opposite, was more of a passer, but could score. And I mean, great point guards coming from years past. I mean, you got Keith Appling, I like my sister was a big fan of Travis Trice. I like Travis Trice because he's kind of like the underdog guy. You got Denzel Valentine. You got a lot of great point guards that's came through here. So, but yeah, my guy when I was like a kid and growing on, especially, when you're young and you kind of see a guy and you're like, he's going to be my guy forever, even though they only play 3 or 4 years, was Kalen Lucas. Loved me some Kalen Lucas.
Absolutely, yeah. Kalen Lucas, Drew Neitzel. That's really golden era Michigan State basketball post the 2000 championship run. And you can look at any number of guys. You got the Darrell Summerses, you got the Raymar Morgans. There's so many people. I can't even get into it right now. But there's so many memories, so many great players that have walked the banks of the Red Cedar and played in the Breslin Center for Tom Izzo. So he's got just a hell of a roster of alumni that has played for him in years past, and that is continuing to happen with the legacy that he's leaving there. So let's kind of jump into the present rather and see where they're at now. Obviously, let's dive into their loss against Indiana first, and then we'll go rewind the tapes a little bit more. But just because this is as fresh as it could be in our minds, and I believe you were in attendance at that game. Is that correct?
I was there.
Okay, so that kind of came down to the wire. It came down to a basket at one point, and certain things crumble. They either go your way in the last 30 seconds of the game, and you're fouling and trying to play that game, the ticky tack foul, get them to the line, hope they miss. Okay, now we got to make 2 big ones. You got in that situation, and you were on the wrong side of the scoreboard in that particular situation. But you never want to really be there, no matter what side of it you're on. But let's just kind of dice it up a little bit. What led us to that point, and what led us to basically sitting on the edge of our seats, kind of just hoping to get a win?
Well, I mean, when it came down, especially at the end, obviously you can't look at it and go, oh, well, them making 7 or I think it was like 7 or 8 free throws in a row. Oh, that's what lost us the game. Well, you can't put yourself in that position to need a miss at a free throw to win. I was not a fan of the foul call on that one inbounds where the guy went out of bounds. I thought that was kind of a bull call, but that's not what lost the game. The poor offense for 20 now probably more than that, 34 minutes of the game. The let's pass it to each other outside the 3-point line, just play, hot potato with it for 26 seconds of a shot clock. That's not going to score you points, which hurt. And I thought overall, if you look at the defensive effort, I thought it was pretty good. Then the last 6 minutes when the offense actually started playing well, basically, Balo got in foul trouble, but when Balo was in, he was pretty much getting offense rebounds and putbacks all he wanted. And then Renew was getting, he scored the last, not counting free throws, the last probably, before they had to start making free throws, probably made the last 12, 14 points for him. They just threw it in. He was, a couple of them were prayers that went in, but basically back down, fake right, fake left, put up a hook shot and it was going in. You're giving them clean looks, and there was no center for State. Cooper probably did the best job, but then he got in foul trouble and eventually fouled out. Kohler didn't really have an answer for him. And I think Zappala, this is probably the worst game overall that he's played in a Spartan uniform this year. Just looked like he couldn't defend, and offensively he just kind of just sat in the paint and didn't really move his feet much. And it just stagnant when he was out there. And it was just a lot of, obviously woulda, coulda, shoulda, but he just offensively, I think, was their Achilles heel there. They couldn't make a three to save their life. They shot the free throws. They shot, 86% or something like that. They were making their free throws. You just couldn't make a jump shot. And then when you got in and you're getting fouled, or you're throwing up a prayer, and when the prayers weren't getting answered, you're one and done. Not a lot of offensive rebounds, not a lot of putbacks. So if you weren't scoring on your first look, you probably weren't scoring, and they just offensively this did not look good.
Yeah, you mentioned Oumar Ballo. I know he really made a statement when he was playing for Arizona and the Wildcats, and then for him to be then playing an Indiana uniform, playing for the Hoosiers. Obviously, that's a huge asset gained by the Hoosiers. So he was a threat. He's playing against a lot of, I call them wannabe centers, the Jackson Kohlers, especially the Carson Coopers, he's a true center. Even the Xavier Bookers of the world, and the Zappalas. Okay, the Zappalas, you expect more out of a Zappala than what you got that night against Indiana. Terrible. Like you said, the worst.
He's played all year.
Probably the worst
so well all year, and he just played. He wasn't. What is he on the floor? 12 minutes, because he just couldn't. He wasn't giving you any good minutes.
And what about Jeremy Fears? 19 minutes, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 points. Unacceptable.
That's 0 unacceptable. Points is not shocking to me, because he's had the games where he's not a great jump shooter, which that is something I really hope he just sits in the gym. If he doesn't figure it out this year, sits in the gym all off season and figures out, because he's had some open shots, and you can tell he can hit a jump shot, but it's kind of a I don't want to unless I have to type situation, and that's a problem. But he's got to get more assists and more opportunities for his teammates. The problem in this game was when he actually made some good plays, he left his feet, and then he put himself in a bad spot, and he threw a lot of poor passes that got turned into turnovers. And it's that point is just plant your feet. Even if you don't like it, kick it back out. Like, he made a couple good drives, but then he jumped to he was going to shoot, and then he gave up halfway in the air and was like, oh, I got to get rid of it. Well, I don't care what basketball player you are at what age, once you leave your feet and you're not shooting, you're in a very big disadvantage. So he needs to kind of get the mentals back, where he seems kind of off. And I don't know if it was because he missed the Oregon game with the flu and he was just rusty or something. I hope that's not what it was, but he needs to hopefully look at tape of this game and go, I need to completely figure out what I'm doing.
Yeah, because I've seen him drive the ball, and he does a hell of a job driving the ball, facilitating on a drive scenario where you're driving, maybe dishing it back out to the perimeter guy on baseline, whatever, what have you. I didn't see that. Another guy that underperformed, Cohen Carr. Terrible. You got to expect something. They should be able to get at least 6 points, and we can still say they had a terrible game, and they still usually win that game. But we came down to these 2 players mostly, and even got Xavier Booker with 3 points. Zappala 2 points. These players need to get at least 5 and we win this game. That's literally how close we are.
How many minutes does Carr play?
11 minutes.
See, that's the thing.
That's not a lot, though.
He wasn't out there, and he was in foul trouble. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a Hall of Fame coach, so obviously I trust Tomlin's judgment on stuff like this. But he obviously seen something that he didn't like Cohen doing, and he didn't play a lot. And I kind of agree he should be scoring, probably 7, 8 points a game. But I have a feeling the way they were just playing that was a 2-3 zone that I think as a fan, you'd think get behind. They always say get to the middle of the floor and then use the baseline. Go to the baseline. That's what made Cohen Carr what Cohen Carr is going to the baseline and flying from basically almost a 3-point line and dunking it. I feel like they kind of were taking that away, and he didn't want to shoot a three, which that's not a strong part of his game. So I understand why he didn't want to. But then they just weren't getting. They always say zone, get to the free throw line, and they just were not doing that. No one was. I mean, the only person that could kind of score in down like drive and score was Fiddler at the end of the game, and then Jace Richardson. But then Jace Richardson also took probably 5, 6 threes and made one of them. He didn't have a good shooting night. And when you don't have a good shooting night and you're not getting to the free throw line and getting to the middle of the floor to make layups or floaters, when you're not making those, you're going to have a struggle offensively, and they struggled offensively for sure.
Yeah, a lot of shots were not falling for the Michigan State Spartans, and you can see them. You can see this happen. The same thing happened in the UCLA game where they got ice cold. It's like you thought we were in the Arctic Circle because these guys just could not score. They couldn't find a basket. They were handling the ball. We've seen this in the past with Michigan State teams. They get cold. They get scared. They don't want to touch the ball. They don't want to shoot the ball. Okay, so this is a big problem that you have a really difficult time, especially Izzo probably has a tough time coaching this. A really difficult time getting these guys to get out of that situation because they get in that situation, it's like they're locked into it. Then they need something, some kind of spark, whether it's a halftime ass chewing or it's something to happen where a guy gets a steal and maybe a scoop and score, or the guy makes a contested three. Something like that's got to reignite the engine.
It's kind of a double-edged sword too, because years past was like you had a score, and what you said all year is anybody on this team can score, which I do agree. Anybody on the team can score, but not having the go-to guy, because I don't see Fears being like, I'm going to get a bucket. Oregon, I thought Jace took over that role and was like, I'm going to go get a bucket. He didn't this game, but the problem is everybody can score, but then also you're like, hey, I need you to go get me a bucket. Well, games like Indiana, where all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm going to go score, and then you shoot 28% from the floor. All of a sudden you're like, that's what I want you to do, but hopefully they start falling and you can get points. And just they could not buy a bucket. And that's the problem of not having a guy like a Tyson Walker in years past, or Cassius Winston, or the Kalen Lucases, or the Keith Applings, or just a guy that you give the ball to and go get me a bucket or get me a clean shot. And the thing about Cassius Winston that was so good was he would draw in 3-4 defenders, and then he had Tillman or someone else, Nick Ward, to drop the ball off to get a bucket. Even if he wasn't scoring, he was creating space for other people to score. And I think Fears could be that because he gets a lot of people that draw to him, but then he's got to make the right read and right pass, and he's turned the ball over way too much in them situations. And I thought Jace, like I said, in the Oregon game, he took that game over and was like, I'm going to score. And I thought that would come out against Indiana. I don't know if it was just off night for him, but his shots were just not going down like they were against Oregon.
Yeah, totally. And it's unfortunate. Let's get a comment here from Paul Steele. The next 3 games will determine who the Spartans are. If they can pull out 2 of the next 3 games, they will be okay. Lose the next 2 to 3, trouble for the green and white. UCLA and USC took a lot out of Izzo's team. Hope they figure it out. Yeah, you know what, Paul? I hope they do too, because, it gives us a lot of uncertainty when they don't give us the performance that we expect. You mentioned it with Michigan. I think this is a case with a lot of teams, and anyone that's a fan of any team can have this to say about their team at certain points. Sometimes you don't know what team you're going to get. And that's where you go to the AP polls, you look at the Big Ten standings. Any team can win at any given moment. So it's just really kind of something that basketball is such a meticulous game. It's not like football where you can kind of count on a team doing something specifically and it's going to go a certain way. Basketball is there's a lot more chance involved. Yes, there's things you can control, but at the same time, you're counting on chance in a very big way. Coming from Issa, get that green poster down, go blue. I can't believe. I mean, are we just gonna let him say that, T, or what the hell are we doing here?
No, he's probably still all drunk from the Waste Management Open.
That looked fun. Issa, tell us about that, bro. I mean, I saw the pictures. I saw where you guys were at. That looked like a hell of a time sitting on the 16th hole watching these guys tee off. Everyone's drunk off their ass. I mean, it looked like a
Unfortunately,
good
I'm not
time.
a traitor to my school. I mean, I got a diploma on my wall that came from that school, so I'll
Yeah, I
die
like
with
those.
them.
I
I'll
like
sink
those
with the ship.
posters.
I'm like the captain at the Titanic.
I
I
like those
sink till I
posters.
freaking hit the dirt.
Those are nice, hanging up there in the rafters. Issa,
And
you
I'm
know
gonna find
what?
another one here pretty soon.
You can shut your mouth. Check yourself next time you come in my chat. All
I
right.
keep doing the wrong hand. Yeah, look at them. Two. It's two chain.
Unbelievable. Jeez, I mean, we try to run a good show. This is a kids show. This is a show for families to enjoy on a Thursday night, and you should enjoy it. Have a good time. Maybe even crack a couple beers if you want.
Cheers, Lou.
But just have some respect. Okay, have some respect for the vision that we
Hey,
have.
state. Michigan's got to play state twice, so we'll see how that works out.
Absolutely. Sam Binkowski, January, February, Izzo. Yes, yes, yes.
But that's the thing is Izzo statistically February is his worst winning percentage.
Yeah, but you know what, T? I'm so sick and tired of seeing the same old shit that I've been seeing for the last 3-4 years. And even since pre-COVID, when they had that big win, the Kenny Goins 3 and everything, when they had Cassius before COVID, when they beat Duke and deep in the tournament. Okay. I haven't seen that fire since then. And then obviously we all had our hearts broken with COVID kind of taking that
Yeah, 'cause that was.
opportunity away. But
I think that
it's
team
like,
was the 2020 team was even better than
but
the
who would
19.
have said that that would have actually been the year, though? I mean, we never seen it
No,
happen,
you
so it's
don't. But I mean,
easy
like
to speculate that it could
eye
have been.
test, it felt like they were better.
Yeah, so we're going off the eye test.
But
But you have to go off the eye
but,
test. That's really all you have to go off of is the eye test.
but
That's the best form of
yeah,
anything that you have to go off of.
it is annoying and it sucks, watching these tough losses and close losses in February. But I will take this February right now, how it's going, if that means a Final Four or playing for a national championship in March. If this means, hey, you won, was it 13, 14 games in a row? And I think you learn, and I think Izzo will agree, you learn more from losing than you do winning. As a fan, it sucks because obviously I'm not on the team, so I don't know what's getting said or what's the speeches that are being told. But I hope that now they're losing, kind of seeing how it is and what the mistakes they're making, they can change it for the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament, and that will make them a better overall team, and hopefully they can make a deep run.
Absolutely. Adam Solomon in the chat. Welcome, Mr. Solomon. Hey, fellas, go green, go white. Absolutely. It's all go green, go white over here. Big Spartan guys over here on the GCP on this Thursday night. But I think it has to be said. I think it has to be said that, and this can be said about any team. It's one of those one size fits all deals, is that every team, no matter how good they are, they have to get brought to the ground and they have to, get taken a step back by any other team because they get too big for their britches and they just can't handle it to a certain extent because it's like you want to think that a team is so good, a team is so well composed that they will never, succumb to getting too complacent or too comfortable. But I think that's bullshit. I think that will happen to every team, and we've
Well, look
definitely
at
seen that with Michigan State.
we say probably the last, I don't know, at least 10 years, the best Michigan State teams have been the Cassius Winston 2 years of 2020, 2019. 2019, I think they lost 7 or 8 games. In 2020, I think they lost 6 or 7. So, I mean, losing, a handful of games, you obviously, what was it, 2020 or 2020, 2021, the COVID year. I mean, they were 15, 14 or something like that. You don't want a game or a season like that. But losing 5, 6, 7 games is not the end of the world where it's like, oh, well, you're not in the top 10 AP poll. That actually doesn't matter. AP poll is just, something to make yourself feel better because all that matters is your seeding for the Big Ten tournament and your seeding for the NCAA tournament. That's all that matters.
Well, I'd prefer to not be in the Big Ten, in the top 10 in the AP polls because that means we fall to the middle of the pack a little bit more. I think last year they might have cut it a little too close.
Well,
But
they fell apart at the end of the year. I mean, you lost, 5 or 6 or something like that?
I mean, they were lucky to make the
4 or
tournament.
6.
They were very lucky to make the tournament. They shouldn't have made the tournament, arguably.
I don't know about last year, the 2021 year where they're in the first four that year. There's a very good
Well,
argument
yeah,
about
you
this
got
team.
that year too. That year too, I
But I
forgot about
thought
that.
last year they were a good enough team to make the tournament. They just kind of fell apart at the end of the year. But I mean, you got to look at it. They played really well against Mississippi State last year in round one, and then North Carolina. You got to remember the first 12 minutes of the game, State was up 15, and then they just self imploded. And I know they ended up losing by like 18, but they looked really good in the first 15 minutes. So I mean, they were a good team, but they didn't have any. I feel like what this team had early on, I'm kind of starting to lose it, was fight. Yeah, they had like the will to win. Like, I want to win. I don't care how we do it. I don't care if everybody scores 6 points or if everybody scores 20 points. Like, I just want to win.
Yeah, we got to have that. I don't even want to think about that North Carolina game. Got another
No,
comment from Paul
you're
Steele.
not going to make the tournament.
It's unfortunate if Izzo doesn't come close to having 2 technicals. The green and white usually don't perform. Yeah, I mean, we saw that. We saw in the Oregon game. That definitely played a role. Tom getting pissed off and MFing his team and players. Spartans tend to struggle. He's got to get pissed off. That's the Izzo way. Yeah, so basically he says they perform when Izzo performs. And yeah, you got to have that fire. But I think that leads to what you were saying too, T, is that fight, that will to win, seeing your coach getting pissed off, blowing a gasket on the sidelines. That gets you going. That makes you want to play basketball. Makes you
Yeah,
want to go
but
into battle and
unfortunately,
die for the guy.
also, I mean, he's not on the court. He can get as mad as he wants, but you still got to go out there and make the shot, make the play, and execute.
Right,
He
but
can
that's
draw.
got to add to the anger of the coach.
Yeah, I was gonna say he can draw up the best play, but if you're not executing, there's nothing he can do. And he can just scream at you all he wants, or he can figure something else. He's got to figure out what speaks to these kids. Is it screaming at them? Is it, kind of sitting them down, talking to them like we're talking now, or is it like he said, screaming at them and just beating them down like he did in the old school days? He's got to figure out what is going to motivate these guys, and I trust he can do that. I mean, I trust his years of experience and his success that he's had, that he can do it.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Got a big one against Illinois this Saturday at 8 p.m. Looking forward to that one. It's gonna be a big one. It's hard to beat a team twice, especially Illinois. They're playing solid, and it was a
On the
close
road.
game when we beat them the first time. But now we're at their house, so got that to deal with. Adam Solomon with another comment. Zone defense is Izzo's Achilles heel. 30 years of coaching, and he has never figured out how to attack a zone defense. Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's kind of what I think a lot of State fans are avoiding even talking about because they know that's a glaring issue. And if you can't attack a zone defense and find holes in the zone and really go towards the weaknesses in that zone defense, take advantage of them, then the zone will beat you every time. And you'd think that there would be some cracks in the foundation of a zone defense to find some opportunities. But for whatever reason, that has really caused Izzo's teams to struggle.
Yeah, I mean, Syracuse, what was that, 2016, 2017? That was the glaring one that everybody said he couldn't do a zone. And then obviously this game and just zone. I think his problem is he just don't see zone anymore, really. And now when he does it, he like deer in the headlights.
Yeah, it's crazy. Got to figure it out because a lot of teams play zone, especially down the stretch going into the Big Ten
You
tournament
got
and the
what,
Big Dance.
6 weeks?
So
You're
that's
running
right.
out of time, but you still have time.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said that's why this is a great time right now because you're running out of time. The clock is ticking, but you still have that little sliver of time to make those adjustments, make things happen, and get the losses you're getting right now, so you don't have to get those losses down the road. Maybe make a splash, ride that momentum of the Big Ten tournament or whatever conference tournament your team's playing for. In this case, Michigan State in the Big Ten tournament. Ride that momentum into the Big Dance, and it's going to do wonders for you. So, good deal. All right, T, that brings us to the end of the show. Got any final words, final thoughts for the people out there before we sign off tonight?
Go green. I mean, mainly. I mean, I think they're going to turn it. I think they're going to turn it around, and I think all these Michigan people that have their sitting on their high horse think they're hot shit. I think I know all them 50-50 balls and them 3-point games they're winning are going to turn around, and they're going to start losing. And guess what? They're going to be standing on the top of the tallest mountain, screaming, "Hey, we're a football school!" And there's a reason for that. Is because you are. you're dog shit basketball, and you have a couple good years, but you're nothing special either. So, yep. I mean, I still have faith in my Spartans. They'll turn it around. A couple disappointing, 10 days, but I have faith in, Izzo. They can say he's old. They can say he's washed. I'll have faith, and I'll ride with him till the day he says I'll never coach again. So I'm behind him all the way.
Absolutely, T. Good words. Good way to leave them with some words of wisdom there. And I'm the same way. I gotta attest to that because we've been riding with Izzo for this long. It's our alma mater. He's been the guy for forever, right? What is it? 30 years? Did he go past 30 years? I think he
No, I
did.
think this is his 30th year, I think.
Okay. Well,
Or 30th.
almost 30 years. Yeah. He had the big presentation about the 30-year deal.
Well, he was an assistant for, I think, like 7.
Yeah, he's been there a
On
long
staff
time.
forever.
He's been there a long time, so we're going to have faith, and we're going to follow them all the way to the bitter end, regardless of the finish.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so make sure to check us out on social media. Find all of our links to all of our social media in the description of this podcast down below. Make sure to check us out on our website, ginsportsnetwork.com, and check us out on IG at Gin Sports Network and at Gin College. For now, I'm John J. II, alongside Tony Minarik, the sports expert for the Gin College podcast. See you next time. Have a good night.